Mr. Chairman, this is a great country, and I think we're all proud of our country. It is no small tribute to our country that people all over the world dream about coming to America. Our forefathers, they were either born here or they dreamed of coming to America. And America is not just a country, it's an ideal. And that idea is about the individual. That's the basis of our country. It's not about the government. It's about the individual. It's about the citizen. It's about freedom. It's about choice. And, Mr. Chairman, the problem with this bill isn't the size of the bill. The problem with this bill is that it goes right to the heart and strikes a wound against the character of our country. It's the character and the culture of this legislation that is so wrong, and not the size. Individuals in this country ought to have the right to choose. They ought to have the right to choose their health care provider, their doctor. They ought to be able to make choices, health care choices, treatment choices between themselves, their doctor, their family, not the government. We see with health care that this idea of the individual, this idea of choice, this idea of freedom to make those choices is under attack. We found that with energy, that not individual, the country, but the government determined that we weren't going to utilize coal, our most abundant resource. We weren't going to use oil, that we were going to tax, energy. We were going to discourage that. We're taxing health care in the health care bill. And in this bill, we levy taxes. We have sanctions. People may still be able to make choices, but they'll be discouraged or they'll be taxed when they make those choices. You know, the decision about seeking the doctor of your choice, or the decision about borrowing money, or the choice about lending money, or the choice about the terms of that loan, those ought to be choices between individuals. Those should not be managed by the government. Now, the chairman has brought this legislation before it, and it is his legislation. I mean, his image and his imprint is clear on each and every page of this legislation. I've not really seen such an individual drive legislation since perhaps the First Lady Hillary Clinton brought her government-managed health care to the floor in the early 1990s. And this is just simply another wave of an attempt on the part of really, and I think the chairman really has faith in the government and the government's ability to manage and the government's ability to make decisions, that he actually has a sincere faith. In fact, members of this committee on TV this morning, and Democratic members, actually made references to Europe, the way they do things in Europe, the fact that the government is making these decisions in Europe. We are the greatest, as I said, the greatest country on the face of the earth. And we didn't get there through government management. We didn't get there through government management of health care. We won't get there by government management of credit or of lending or of other financial services. It won't happen. We're the largest economy in the world. It's not the British economy. It's not the French economy. It's not the Chinese economy. It's not the Japanese economy. It's the American economy. How did we get to be the largest economy in the world, 3 times larger than the next largest economy, the Japanese economy, bigger than the Chinese economy, the Japanese economy, the British economy, and the French economy put together. We got there with faith in the individual, not in the government. And that is what's wrong with this bill. And you can clearly look, and there no more is it more evident in this bill that not only do we not have faith in the individual and in individual responsibility and in individuals' right sometimes to take risks, but we also give individuals the right in this country to succeed. But when you do that, unlike in other countries, you give them the right to fail. And this bill clearly establishes a bailout fund. And it says when the largest companies in this country, when they fail, we're going to establish a $150 billion fund, a permanent fund, a permanent TARP. The Democratic gentleman from California, Mr. Brad Sherman, said TARP on steroids. And where do you get this money from? Well, actually, it's $200 billion. $150 you get not from the companies that are failing, but from their competitors who are succeeding. And you transfer that money to those companies that have taken risks they shouldn't have taken. And you take it from those companies that didn't take those risks. That's not competition. That's socialism. Now, you can call it what you want to, but it's socialism. It's government managed. It's not what America is about. And let me reserve the balance of my time, but before I do, let me say this. This is not about a crisis that occurred last September. This is not about the continuing bailouts that started with the Federal Reserve, an independent body, but continued and have grown in intensity under the Obama administration. But there is enough fault to go around. But cannot we agree on one thing, that it is time that we allow people in this country to succeed and we allow them to fail? Isn't it time in this country that we decide that there's no more too big to fail? Because if you make that determination, you make the determination, as we have over the past year, that there are thousands of small businesses and medium-sized businesses and companies that were too small to save. And that's not fair. That's not what America is about. It is not about taking from people who pay their mortgage, and no matter what the circumstances of those who failed to pay their mortgage. It's not about transferring money from one to the other. That's not about America. It might be about charity. It might be about neighbor helping neighbor, but that is not what this country was established about. So let's not use the crisis that we have experienced in this past year to create the calamity of a government-managed country where the individual, where freedom, where choice is a thing of the past. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves